right, so today we're diving into the story of Nicky Barnes. This guy's story is as fascinating as it is complex.
Yeah, you've probably heard the name.
Yeah.
Maybe from like portrayals in movies or something like American Gangster.
Exactly. But today we're going deep. We're going to uncover the real story behind the man they called Mr. Untouchable.
Mr. Untouchable, yeah. What a story.
We've got excerpts from his Wikipedia article, and we're going to use that to kind of trace his journey. From the streets of Harlem, all the way up to the heights of his criminal power.
All the way to the top.
And then down to his ultimate downfall.
Yeah. And you know what's so fascinating about Barnes' story is how much it, like, challenges that typical gangster narrative.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this isn't just some guy born into a life of crime. He was born in Harlem.
Yeah.
And he had a really tough childhood, escaping an abusive father. But his path to becoming a kingpin wasn't a straight line. Not at all.
No, it wasn't like preordained or something. He had to kind of get there. And, you learn about his early heroin addiction. And it's almost like foreshadowing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
To the empire that he'll go on to build later. But then he overcomes that addiction in prison, which is, it's like a level of willpower you wouldn't necessarily associate with a future crime lord.
Right. Like, you think of these guys, you gotta be like, it's like giving into those impulses.
Yeah.
But he showed this incredible self-control.
Yeah.
And, that's where things get really interesting. It's in prison, where his life takes like this total turn.
Right.
He meets this Colombo family,
The Lumbo family.
Crazy Joe Gallo.
Crazy Joe Gallo.
And that's when things get really interesting.
So wait, we've got an Italian mobster mentoring a black gangster. That's not an alliance you see every day.
Especially back then.
Yeah, especially back then.
Oh, you're right. It really speaks to how the landscape of organized crime was changing.
Yeah.
Gallo was this really shrewd operator. He saw an opportunity in Harlem.
Yeah.
This untapped market. And he recognized Barnes's potential.
He saw something in him.
He did.
Yeah.
And, he didn't just offer advice. He actually went out of his way to provide a lawyer for Barnes. And that lawyer helped get Barnes' conviction overturned.
Wow. So in a way, Gallo kind of like paved the way for Barnes's rise.
He did, yeah. It makes you wonder how things would have turned out
Right.
if that hadn't happened.
Totally different story.
It's a real turning point.
Yeah.
Barnes gets out of prison. Not only is he free,
Yeah.
but he's got all this knowledge now, all these connections. He knows how to build a criminal empire.
And that's exactly what he does.
He does?
He forms the council in 1972, a 7-man syndicate
7 guys.
that would control a huge chunk of the Harlem heroin trade.
Unbelievable.
But when you say the council, it sounds more like a board meeting than a drug operation.
Right.
Was that intentional?
Oh, absolutely. Barnes was very deliberate. He modeled the council after the Italian mafia families.
Oh, wow.
He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
This wasn't just about brute force. It was about structure, hierarchy, presenting a united front.
It's like he was bringing a corporate model to the drug trade.
He was. That's a great way to put it.
Which is kind of ingenious in a way, if you can even call it that.
Yeah, if you can call it that. But it was incredibly effective.
Yeah.
By 1976, their reach extended way beyond Harlem. It went throughout New York State, Pennsylvania, even into Canada.
Wow.
We're talking a massive network. Lieutenants, distributors.
Street dealers.
All operating under the counter.
Under the umbrella of the council,
Yeah.
and at the head of this empire is Mr. Untouchable.
Mr. Untouchable himself.
And let's talk about the lifestyle.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the stories about Barnes' wealth.
Extravagance there.
Legendary.
Legendary. I mean, this guy was living the high life, no doubt about it. We're talking fleets of luxury cars, Bentleys, Citroens,
Maserati.
anime suits, Italian shoes, jewelry worth millions.
Millions.
He flaunted his wealth.
Which is interesting because it seems like he's completely disregarding the whole like low profile thing.
Right. You'd think he'd want to stay under the radar.
Yeah.
But he was almost like wanted to be seen.
Was it arrogance? Or was there something more strategic at play?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Some people say it was calculated. He wanted to intimidate his rivals, project this aura of invincibility.
Don't mess with me.
Don't mess with me. Exactly. But others think it was just his ego. He wanted to revel in his success.
He earned it.
He did. In his mind, anyway.
Right. And, this flamboyant lifestyle, it catches up with him eventually.
Right.
It does.
Wasn't it a New York Times Magazine article that kind of sealed his fate?
Are you talking about the one where he's posing on the cover
Yeah.
with the headline, Mr. Untouchable.
That's the one. I mean, it seems like a move that would backfire.
You think?
Yeah.
It did. The article, it was meant to showcase his power, but it totally backfired. It enraged President Carter, who then ordered the Justice Department to make Barnes' prosecution a top priority.
It's like the article put a target on his back.
Yeah.
In a way that nothing else had before.
Exactly.
So Mr. Untouchable gets touched.
He gets touched by the long arm of the law. What a humbling experience that must have been.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
What happens next?
Well, Barnes is eventually convicted in 1978 and sentenced to life in prison without parole.
Oh.
But that's not the end of the story. In fact, I'd argue that's where things get even more interesting.
Okay. I am all ears. What happens to Mr. Untouchable behind bars?
Well, he discovers a different kind of betrayal, one that leads to a major shift in his outlook and his actions.
Okay, hold on. We got to unpack this. What kind of betrayal are we talking about?
So remember, Barnes built his empire on a foundation of loyalty, strict rules. Imagine his surprise when he finds out that one of his most trusted council members, Guy Fisher, was having an affair with his mistress.
No way.
Yeah.
So even in the criminal underworld, there are lines you don't cross.
Apparently so.
Wow.
And for Barnes, this was a breaking point, this betrayal, plus the realization that his assets were being neglected, legal fees unpaid. That's what fuels his decision to become a federal informant.
Wait, Mr. Untouchable, the guy who built an empire on secrecy and loyalty, turns on his own organization.
He does.
Why?
It was revenge and a desire to dismantle everything he had created. He gave over 100 names to the authorities, including 5 council members and even his own wife.
Wow. From kingpin to informant. What a fall from grace. But was it a calculated move to salve himself? Or was there something more to it?
That's the question, isn't it? Was it pure self-preservation, or was there some genuine remorse? A reckoning with the consequences of his actions?
Yeah.
It's something we'll definitely explore as we delve deeper into his life after prison.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The rise of Nicky Barnes, the creation of his empire, his shocking downfall. But as you pointed out, it doesn't end there. There's a whole other chapter to uncover, and I, for one, I'm ready to hear more.
Yeah, me too. This is where things get really interesting. Let's dive in.
So we left off with Nicky Barnes behind bars, right? He turned informant, brought down his own empire. You'd think that'd be the end of the story. Classic rise and fall.
Yeah, you'd think so, right? But prison's actually where things take a real turn.
Oh, really?
It's a fascinating contrast. You know, this notorious crime lord, this guy who's all about luxury and power. Now he's stuck in a cell, but it's in that environment that he kind of seems to go through a change.
The transformation.
Yeah, exactly.
What's that look like, though?
Well, for one thing, he starts winning poetry contests in prison.
Poetry contests.
Poetry contests.
Wow.
He earns a college diploma with honors, starts teaching English to other inmates.
It's like he's trying to redeem himself.
It really does seem that way.
Make amends for his past.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, was there always like this other side to him?
Right.
Like a side that was hidden
That's possible.
while he was running his empire?
It's definitely possible. And it's also worth noting that because he cooperated with the authorities, he gets a reduced sentence.
He does?
Yeah, he's released in 1998,
1998.
decades earlier than his original life sentence.
So the guy who helped dismantle a massive drug empire gets out early
It happens.
because he flipped.
It's the criminal justice system in action.
Right.
Some might say it's a necessary evil
To catch the bigger fish.
to bring down these huge organizations, but others might question if it really serves justice.
Right, right. So he gets out. What does he do?
Well, he enters the witness protection program,
Witness protection.
which is a pretty big step.
It
It
is.
says a lot about wanting to leave his past behind.
Mr. Untouchable disappears.
He does. He pretty much vanishes from public life.
So he trades notoriety for anonymity, like
Yeah.
a second chance, but a hidden one.
Exactly. But he doesn't stay silent forever.
Oh,
In 2007, he publishes a memoir
a memoir.
called Mr. Untouchable, My Crimes and Punishments.
Wow.
And he even participates in a documentary with the same name.
So he's back in the spotlight, but this time on his own terms.
Exactly.
What's he trying to say, though?
I think he's trying to control his own narrative, offer his perspective on everything that happened. He doesn't shy away from the darker parts of his past either. He admits to being involved in 8 murders.
8 murders.
Yeah,
That's a lot to reconcile with the image of him trying to redeem himself.
it is. And yet both sides seem to be a part of him.
Right.
He even has a conversation with Frank Lucas,
Frank Lucas.
his old rival.
Wow.
Imagine those two.
Sitting down together, decades after their turf wars.
It's pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
It really shows how time changes things.
Yeah.
How the dynamics of the criminal world shift. Barnes and Lucas, they were products of a certain time and their meeting.
Yeah.
It shows how much things had changed.
So even with his past behind him, Barnes was still making news. I remember reading about his interview with Howard Stern back in 2008.
Yeah, he talked about life and witness protection. Pretty rare for someone to do that.
It is.
But it shows how willing he was to engage with the public, even with that veil of anonymity.
So Mr. Untouchable ends up living a quiet life,
A hidden life.
trying to make up for what he did.
Yeah. Well, that's where things get a little mysterious.
Okay.
We know Barnes died from cancer in 2012,
2012.
but his death wasn't reported until 2019.
7 years later.
7 years.
What?
Because of witness protection,
Ah.
his identity was kept secret,
Even in death.
even in death.
Wow.
It's like a final act of disappearing.
It is.
A real testament to the power of the program.
Wow. Talk about a final chapter.
I know.
It's like he vanished into thin air.
He did.
Leaving behind this legacy. That's both fascinating and controversial.
Definitely. And that legacy continues on. Nicky Barnes has been portrayed in so many movies and TV shows.
Oh, yeah.
Like Sean Diddy Combs, in Carlito's Way, Rise to Power,
Oh, right.
Cuba Gooding Jr.
Yeah.
in American Gangster,
Of course.
and more recently, Derek Baskin in the miniseries The Offer.
Whoa.
His story has become this cautionary tale
Yeah.
about the allure of the criminal world
Yeah.
and the danger that comes with it.
But it also makes you think about redemption.
Second chances.
And the choices people make when they're faced with these extreme situations.
Yeah.
So we've gone from the streets of Harlem to the top of a criminal empire, to prison, witness protection, and finally a death shrouded in secrecy. It's been quite a ride. What does it all mean, though? What's Nicky Barnes' lasting impact? Nicky Barnes, Mr. Untouchable. Built this whole empire, brought it down himself, tried to redeem himself maybe, but stayed hidden until the very end. It's a story that really gets you thinking.
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a tough one to figure out. He was a ruthless crime boss, responsible for so much pain. But he also seemed capable of change.
Right.
Like he wanted to be better. He was seeking knowledge, even teaching others.
Yeah, the poetry, the college degree, you don't see that every day, especially
Right.
from someone with his past. Makes you wonder if it was all genuine.
Right. Or was it a way to get out of prison faster?
Exactly.
I can't really know for sure.
Yeah.
But we can look at what he did. He helped the authorities, took down his whole organization. That took a lot of courage, no matter what his reasons were.
And then he disappears. Witness protection. Writes a book. Does interviews. What was he after? Was it forgiveness? Was he trying to set the record straight?
Could be.
Or was he just trying to cash in
Yeah.
on being Mr. Untouchable?
It might have been all of those things.
Yeah.
He was a product of his environment,
Streets.
driven by ambition, the need for power. But he also seemed to want to make things right.
It's interesting, all the choices he made. Every step of the way, he
Yeah.
had to decide what to do,
What was the best move?
knowing there would be consequences.
Always consequences.
First choosing to be a criminal,
Right.
then betraying his own people, and finally disappearing completely.
Each choice had a huge impact.
He did.
His drug empire caused a lot of pain.
So much suffering.
And then working with the authorities, it ended his empire. But it also raised questions about how we handle justice,
Yeah.
how we use informants.
And witness protection.
It let him live a quiet life,
Away from it all.
but it also left a lot of unanswered questions.
So what do we take away from all this? What can we learn from Nicky Barnes?
I think it reminds us that even the worst people are still human. They can do terrible things, but they can also change. And their stories, they make us think about justice and redemption and how complicated people really are.
It's a story that stays with you.
It does.
Nicky Barnes, a man who lived many lives, leaving behind a legacy that's both fascinating and troubling.
For sure.
We've given you the facts, the different sides of the story. Now it's up to you to decide what it all means. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life of Mr. Untouchable.